Hey people, it's Sleepy Reader, Damien here. I wanted to give you a little rundown of my thoughts of the comic books I read this week. I don't know if I'll get into a whole lot of depth, we'll see. I've been pretty tired lately. Let's start, I guess, because it's on the top, with Night World. It's issue number 2 of 4. There may be a continuing series following this, who knows? It's a delight for people like me who enjoy Jack Kirby-inspired artwork. It's pretty exceptionally good Jack Kirby-inspired artwork. It's clearly Jack Kirby-inspired, but it feels natural. It feels real. And some of it may be the coloring. The coloring is pretty spectacular and really captures the kind of romantic, gloomy, doomy, I don't want to say horror, but I suppose it's horror, but old-fashioned kind of horror. It's like a cross between Edgar Allan Poe and Jack Kirby's own The Demon, perhaps. So I just love looking at this artwork over and over again. If they don't continue this Night World, I hope that this artist continues to do work for Image or for someone else whose comics are accessible to me. I think he's an Italian artist, not 100% sure. Paolo Leonori. And so I just delighted in this. There's not a lot to tell you about the plot. We just have some more stuff about a key and the demons fighting with each other for it, and creatures down in hell. I don't know. I can't even describe this book very well. But I love even that the way it ends here with this next Armies of the Night and all these arms coming up out of the goo. So it's just silly fun, really, but it's the right kind of silly fun for me. So there's that. As some of you know, I do subscriptions through Marvel sometimes, and I don't always review those books because they come late. I think I got The Savage Hulk not too late, that it's come out fairly recently, and I read these 3 issues together. They are written and drawn by Alan Davis, and art-wise I'd say it's Alan Davis at his best. Alan Davis is clearly an artist who fell in love with I want to say Denny O'Neil, but it's Neil Adams, who fell in love with Neil Adams and whose artwork is, deeply influenced by Neil Adams. And here he totally indulges his Neil Adams love. Savage Hulk is like Savage Wolverine, or like Adventures of Superman, or one of those things where it's out of continuity adventures. So Alan Davis chose to set his continuity following X-Men 66, and to sort of indulge his love of that wonderful Neil Adams X-Men run. So it's very reminiscent art-wise of it, but with super Matt Hollingworth coloring, the kind of coloring you couldn't have gotten back in the day, that just accents the art perfectly and just makes everything even that much more exciting. I'm trying to find a scene where the X-Men show up. But you definitely, whenever the X-Men are in the picture, you can completely flash back to those Roy Thomas, Denny O'Neil issues. And it's a fun read, mostly carried by the art, though, I'd say. And what it reminds me, the charm that those old Marvel comics had was in lots of little touches that gave more personality and character to their characters. And that's all way more toned down and low-key when Alan Davis does it. There's a few tips of a hat of there, where the Beast makes a comment about the similarity between him and the Hulk in a subtle way, and other moments like that. But mostly, it's it's as if the writer who is the artist is more wrapped up in the mechanics of the plot, and maybe this is missing from Marvel in general, but it's just very noticeable when you flash back to these good old days. These were written, the originals were written by Roy Thomas, and he, followed in the Stan Lee footsteps of always putting in a lot of little quips and character touches, and those seem minor, but they really add up, and I really miss them for the most part in here. Although, that's just a comparison. I am quite happy I'm getting these at the discounted subscription rate that I get them at, the direct from Marvel subscriptions, which, because I've been doing a lot of subscriptions with them, basically you end up paying $2 an issue instead of $4 an issue, and I still have the digital codes I can share with friends. So it was a delight, to read, to look at more than to read. So I'm looking forward. I think there's one more issue in Alan Davis's arc on Savage Hulk, and then someone else will take it over. The Hulk is always a character that's just a light read for me, but when done right, a really fun light read. And so anyway, if that appeals to anyone, I imagine a trade will come out shortly of these 4 issues. Or perhaps you can pick them up in dollar bins or the like. And if you like the Hulk, you might want to keep an eye on Savage Hulk. Although, when I have to pay close to the full rate of the $4, I just wait for trades on Marvels or read them digitally. But yeah, there can be times when I'm sick of Alan Davis art, but here I was just totally in love with it. I went with him into his inner Neil Adams. I've gone on for that too long. Pardon me. Let's see. What else? How else do I want to do? I'm gonna, at the end of this, I'm gonna discuss the future End books and do more spoilers in them. So I'll just talk about the other things first. Very quickly, I read with my daughter Tiny Titans Return to the Treehouse number 4. I think this is a 6-issue miniseries. You can definitely pick up individual issues, although the overriding theme is they're trying to find their stolen treehouse. Really, each issue just follows its own theme and humor, so there's just a lot of jokes here about their attempts to visit Aquaman in his undersea world, because they want to find or one of them believes they can do their treehouse on a sort of coral reef tree. And in the previous issue, it was all about their visit to Shazam's cave, and shenanigans ensued there. They excel at 2 or 3 page joke sequences with great timing, and the art, once you get used to the purposefully childlike way that Art Balthazar draws, is just incredibly charming and really wonderfully colored. I think Balthazar does his own coloring. I don't know where the credits are. But it is very funny. Definitely a total delight to read. Yeah, I think Balthazar does his own coloring. A total delight to read with a child, but I think kind of delightful to read if you're in the mood for childlike fun. Scooby-Doo Team Up was basically Scooby-Doo teams up with the Super Friends of the TV show, and it's a really well done. If Scooby-Doo were on the Super Friends on the TV show, this would be a great episode. It's nothing more than that. It's nothing less than that. There's ghosts haunting the Hall of Justice, and the Super Friends are disappearing. Supergirl kind of plays a prominent role, so that's kind of nice. Maybe that's a little extra added thing. I don't know if you saw Supergirl and the Super Friends. The ghosts all turn out to be kind of the Justice League's rogues gallery. Sorry for the spoiler there. So anyway, it's fun. Definitely to be read with a kid, I think. Or if you just have a really strong Scooby-Doo or Super Friends nostalgia. It could be a lot of fun. I got a lot of DCs. Well, not a lot, but 5 of them. But the only one that was not part of Future's End was Batman Eternal. Excuse me, very thirsty. And I really enjoyed this issue. I don't know if there's a trend here with Batman Eternal to stop doing so many multiple thread issues and have more focused issues. This was a very focused issue that brought Batman and Julia Pennyworth together and gave Batman a confrontation with the Architect, and it was all part of one story, and that was all we got, and that made it a much stronger story. I don't know a lot about the Architect. I just know that he's from the Gates of Gotham and that maybe I should read that. I don't know if he's this exact same character in the New 52. We've got Hush in here. I don't know if he's the exact same. So the underlying complaint or nit to pick with these would really be that this stew of Batman characters, while this adventure is fairly well cooked, it's still an undercooked kind of base in terms of we not knowing the meaning of these characters or be unsure. It's written as if we already know these characters, but do we already know them from having read stuff from the pre-New 52? There have been some complaints about the art. I thought the art was decent. I thought it wasn't colored to best advantage. For the style of art it needed a coloring that made it a little looser feeling or a little less stiff, a little lighter maybe, because it was so heavy with the black ink. It needed some a lighter touch with the color. It's not like it's a horrible coloring job or anything. It had the usual feel of Batman Eternal, which is that the jigsaw pieces or the pieces of the stew don't fit perfectly together. This isn't the perfect fit with last issue. It's like a close fit, but not a perfect fit. There's things you could quibble with for sure. I did do a longer video about Batman Eternal and about Grayson, which was done when I was so tired. When I rewatched it later, I just hated it so much that I switched it to unlisted. I'll link it below if you're so into seeing all my thoughts on Batman. Go ahead and watch it. I don't say anything embarrassing there. I just think it's kind of repetitive and sleepy. And I just hated watching it. So, yeah. One person left comments on it, and I really appreciated that. But usually I get more comments on things, so that also indicated to me that maybe it wasn't a video that kept people's interest. This is kind of an interesting artist. There might be Photoshopped elements, or it might just be the way it's colored. And of course, the coloring is all in Photoshop. But it's definitely, I hope they continue in this more focused way, although it does beg the question, if they stay really focused on a few of the plots, what's happening with the other plots? And the timing of everything is just crazy. I have trouble believing that Hush is completely behind it, because I sort of see Hush's MO as sending a lot of villains after Batman. But there seems to be a lot of other stuff going on in the background with the mobs and with the supernatural stuff that doesn't seem as Hush-like. I think the most interesting thing about Hush, as similar, there's a few other characters like this too, but Hush knows all about Bruce Wayne. He's a personal friend of his, so he can get at him in ways that perhaps other villains can't. I do want to see what happens next with Lieutenant Bard, who is no longer Lieutenant Bard, Commissioner Bard. And we don't see any of that here. So, anyway, with slight reservations about the art, very good issue. And then I got 3 of the Future End Month books, all of them in non-lenticular, just the regular covers, which aren't so easy to find, but I don't like the lenticular covers personally. They make me, I look at them for a little while and I don't feel, I don't feel exactly nauseous or dizzy, but I just don't enjoy looking at them after a while. Phantom Stranger, last issue of Phantom Stranger, which was the last official issue of the Phantom Stranger before cancellation, kind of put a cap on his story. And then this one puts a cap on it again in another way. A not entirely uninteresting way. The issue amused me, but the Phantom Stranger is totally a passive character here. And we get a sort of, I suppose, a more definitive statement from God, who appears, of course, as a Yorkie Terrier dog. You know, so clever, God spelled backwards. Who wraps things up for us. It kind of leaves Phantom Stranger ready to go off and have adventures and be his own man, but it does take place 5 years from now. So when Phantom Stranger reappears in the Trinity of Sin, it'll be before these events. So it's kind of giving Phantom Stranger a little more of another happy ending after the sort of happy ending of the end of his series, but to little purpose. But I've been reading all the Phantom Strangers, and I wanted the last issue, and this is an okay last issue. Swamp Thing was a really good issue, except that, so like Phantom Stranger, it doesn't tie in with the Future's End series, the weekly ongoing. As far as one can tell, there's no real connection to it at all. But it does show the Swamp Thing 5 years in the future, and he's on a quest, and it's an interesting quest. It's beautifully drawn by Jesus Saez, who's become my favorite Swamp Thing artist, I would say. And although Yannick Paquette was extremely good, we just haven't seen him in a long time. So it was a fun journey, more good creative writing from Charles Soule, great art, and it introduces us and then introduces a situation with Abby Arcane and Anton Arcane that wasn't the last situation that I knew of, the last time we touched on those characters was in a Swamp Thing annual a year or two ago. So it gives us a new situation, and then it resolves it yet again. So we yet again resolve the Abby Arcane thread in Alec Holland's life. I would recommend it. It was a very good issue. It stands alone, basically. And, a great, beautiful comic book experience. So then we get Grayson. And along with Grayson, I've heard people talk about the Action Comics Future End, and about the, Hawkeye Future End, about the Green Arrow Future End. And those two tie in directly to events in Future's End number 18 that came out this week. Grayson ties into Future's End in a more indirect but very clever way. It ties into the fact that the world has been at war sometime during these 5 years between now and this future, at war with Apocalypse, and the whole world's been kind of devastated, and everybody's lives have been turned upside down, and people have had to do horrible things in the war, and this kind of shows us some of the horrible things Grayson had to do. I have trouble accepting the ultimate thing Grayson does, which is an assassination of a evil dictator. But if you can take that for granted, okay, Grayson has been, changed by all his wartime experiences, Dick Grayson, and now he's come to the point where he's decided to kill someone evil so they can't do any more evil. If you take that as writ, then this is a very enjoyable, very clever issue where every page goes a little further back in the past and adds a little more view of what was going on. And when we get to the final page, goes all the way back to his childhood just before his parents are murdered on the trapeze rope, and gives us a new angle on how that was done and what it all means and how it all ties in to what happens to him five years from our future, where he seems to be being killed, but it's obvious that it's not going to happen once we read this last page. So it's very, very clever, kind of a mesmerizing read with kind of a so-so fill-in artist. But I think some people kind of might hate this, but other people are going to love this, and it's a very good one-and-done standalone story. But it makes me dislike, if you can accept that Future's End, the experiences leading up to Future's End will turn Grayson into this person who is a willing assassin, then it makes, I just don't want Future's End to happen. I don't want all our heroes to be destroyed and twisted that way. That's good for an Image comic or some kind of Elseworlds, basically, but it's not good for the mainstream